So how does the training shoe actually match up against the race shoe for me? So shoe comparison review I got for you guys today. So I am putting up Adidas's highly rated training shoe, the Evo SL, and seeing how it matches up against their brand new race day shoe, so the Adizero Adios Pro 4. So I'll go through the similarities, differences, and key features, and hopefully from that we'll get an indication of how actually good is the Evo SL when comparing up against a race day shoe. But before we get into it, and if you guys haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And with our specs, so both neutral road running shoes, however, one is a training shoe, so the Evo SL, and it's up against the race shoe, and that is reflected by the big price difference there. Now, is that price differences warranted in actually how they perform against each other? Well, we'll have to find out later in the review. Now, in the weight, there is a bit of a difference in the weight there with the race shoe obviously being the lighter package. Can you feel that on the foot? Well, yes, the Pro 4 does feel like the lighter shoe, and you can definitely feel that. And in the stacks, there is nothing between the stacks. However, when you wear these shoes at the same time, the Evo SL actually feels like it's a little bit taller, but that's just got to do with it having a much firmer midsole foam. And in our upper, so although they may look pretty similar to look at, they're actually quite different of how they're designed in the upper. So with the Evo SL, it's more of a engineered mesh is the material that they use here, but this mesh, it feels quite plasticky, but it is quite flexible, but it is very breathable. It's much more breathable than what you're going to get in the Pro 4, considering that this is the race shoe. Now we've got a really solid heel counter with the Evo SL, and we don't have a solid heel counter in the Pro 4, so super flimsy there. So that, yeah, big difference there. And we've got much more padding around the heel collar here in the Evo SL. I'm going to say probably a medium amount of padding around that heel collar, but a paper thin tongue, but our tongue does have pads on it. So it's got some pads either side of the tongue, so just under where the eyelets go into the shoe, and also across the middle of the tongue. And obviously that does help with the laces pressure. That does use that thin fiddly laces that I don't really like that they use in all the Adizero shoes. So obviously that's going to be prominent in the Pro 4. But to be back to the tongue, this tongue is not gusseted, and that does get a little bit fiddly when you're trying to lace up. Now the lockdown, there is no issues here in the Evo SL, so really good fit here. And yeah, and in the actual fit, in the length, I'm going to say this one is true to size, and it's quite roomy through the toe box, so I think it's just about right. So perfect for me. Where what we got here, Pro 4, different material totally in the upper. This one is called Light Lock. So it doesn't have breathing holes essentially that just go through the shoe, so it doesn't suck the air in. For me, it doesn't feel like a very breathable shoe at all, but this material is so flexible and it just conforms around the foot, and it is super comfortable. So this is probably the most fitting and most dialed in fit, more so than the Evo SL, but yeah, just not as breathable. And as I said before, super flimsy heel counter, but big difference here is in the padding department around the heel collar. So there is virtually no padding in this shoe, except for a couple of heel pads just inside the heel cup there. But yeah, they do a pretty good job of locking the foot down as well. Like, I don't have any heel slippage in this shoe, but I know a lot of runners out there have an issue with this heel collar around here, and also they can get some irritation with the shoe actually digging into them. It's got the same type of paper thin tongue, however this tongue is stitched into the side, so it's much easier to get your foot in and keep that tongue nice and flat. It does use the same fiddly laces here, exactly the same ones as the Evo SL, and the lacing system itself, it's very, very similar to the Evo SL, so nothing in it, but no issues with either really with lacing up and coming undone. I just don't like the laces. In the fit, so this shoe, when comparing both these two shoes, so they're both for me 8.5 in a US, 8.5 US, and the Pro 4 is, I'm going to say, a smidge shorter. Not much, but a smidge shorter. There's definitely a little bit more room in the toe box in the Evo SL, more so than the Pro 4. Stepping comfort, it doesn't really matter in either shoe, but they're both quite nice to step into and walk around. I'm going to say probably the Pro 4 is probably a little bit more comfortable to walk around in. But build quality, they're both from the same company. But there's a big difference in the price, but the build quality to me looks the same, and it looks pretty good here from Adidas. And in our outsole, so what's surprising to see here is you've actually got more rubber coverage on the race shoe, so the Pro 4, more so than you do with the training shoe. But the difference between the coverage or the rubber on both these two shoes is probably the thickness. So they use, in the forefoot here of the SL, this is all Continental rubber, this part right here, and it is, although it's thin compared to other shoes, but in comparison to the Pro 4 of how thin the rubber is on this shoe, it's much thicker in the Evo SL. Obviously going to boost that durability up, but Adidas have been using this Continental rubber for years in their shoes, and it's absolutely excellent. Great in the grip department, great in the durability department. And then they've got lots of exposed foam through the middle of the shoe here in the SL, and some clear rubber through the rear of the shoe here in the high wear areas at the back. Now, as you can see there, Pro 4, so the rubber, as I said, is just so thin, but pretty much everything at the bottom of the shoe is covered by this rubber. Now, this rubber is softer and it's tackier than what you're going to find in the other shoe. They do have a little strip here of that Continental rubber, so the same rubber that's used in the Evo SL, but it's just here under the big toe. But the rest of the rubber, it's got a little bit of like a bit of a tread pattern there, but it's not really needed because this, as I said, this rubber is just so soft, so tacky and so sticky. So the grip here is excellent, but what is going to be the big difference between these two outsoles is the durability. So with this paper thin rubber compound on the bottom of this shoe, I don't believe it is going to hold up anywhere near as long as what you're going to get out of the Evo SL. And in the midsole, so both shoes using their brand's super foam, so Light Strike Pro. However, the foam in each shoe couldn't feel any more different if it tried. So the Light Strike Pro in the Evo SL, just to the touch, it feels much more dense, and it is, yeah, much firmer when in comparison to the Pro 4. But what we got here, one big slab of that Light Strike Pro here. No energy rods in this shoe, but they do have a mid-foot shank, and that runs from about here to here, and that does give the shoe some rigidity, especially through the midfoot, but it also allows the front of the shoe, so just under the toes there, to have a little bit of flexibility. Now, geometry-wise, we've got a nice big early stage rocker here, starting at about 60% back in the shoe, just like it does in the Pro 4. Now, as I said, this Light Strike Pro feels much different. So this one is feels much airier, so less dense, and obviously that results in it feeling much more compliant, much softer, much more squish. So they've got two layers of their Light Strike Pro in this one. So they've got their top layer, and then they've got their energy rods, as you can see probably through here. So their energy rods full length through this shoe, and that does give this shoe some crazy rigidity. So stiffness wise, this shoe is super stiff, so much stiffer than the SL. We've got a little bit of bend here through right on the tip of the toes, but apart from that, the rest of the shoe, yeah, is just super stiff when in comparison. Now, what we've also got here in our geometry, so again, very similar geometry to the Evo SL. So again, I think they say it starts at about 60%, and it's a big early stage rocker, but a big aggressive sort of sweep up into a nice aggressive toe spring. Now, looking at them side by side, it does look like that the Pro 4, its toe spring does go higher than it does in the Evo SL. And in the ride, so these two shoes feel very different. Now, with the Evo SL, what we've got here, for me, this is a very smooth ride. It's more of a responsive ride. There's a bit of springiness to it, but there's not a lot of squish and there's not a lot of bounce. For me, you sink into this foam just a little bit, but it's more of a responsive rebound. So it's quite snappy. As I said, not overly bouncy, but yeah, incredibly efficient shoe. So this rocker and the consistency of the foam, yeah, just make the legs tick over really easily, and you can just feel that you're not wasting any energy in this shoe as you roll along. With this foam as well, I think it's a pretty stable shoe as well, so I'm not getting any instability whatsoever. However, caveat to that, I don't really need a shoe with stability, but yeah, it doesn't feel unstable at all. Now with the Pro 4, what we got here, a much softer ride, so lots more squish into this shoe, and there's lots more bounce into this shoe. So there is, I'm going to say there's more wow factor in this shoe, there's more excitement in this shoe, And yeah, it's certainly more fun to run in. But it does not, to me, feel as efficient or as smooth as the Evo SL, or as responsive. So, which is quite surprising. So you'd think this one's designed for the marathon, you think this would feel nice and efficient on the foot, but because this foam is so soft, you squish into the rear so much, and then you roll onto the rocker and roll out. Yeah, it just feels like that you're wasting probably a fair bit more energy as the foam compresses and as you roll through, where this foam does not compress much, and you just sort of roll through that foot strike really smooth, where this one, yeah, you've got that big sink down, and then you roll onto the rocker. But as I said, this shoe is much more bouncy, there's much more fun factor, and there's much more wow factor in this. Now, with the geometry of both shoes as well, I think that the rocker does feel more aggressive in the Pro 4, more so than the Evo SL. There's not much between them, but yeah, I do feel like it is a little bit more aggressive here in the Pro 4. And stability-wise as well, it does feel much more unstable, especially through the heel, when in comparison to this one. And best use, so for me, the Evo SL, this thing is a very versatile shoe. It'll pretty much handle most things that you throw at it. So it feels great at easy pace, because this geometry, it just works at a wide variety of paces. It's just great. So easy days, up to go through your tempo, your threshold, your race efforts. Yeah, it's good to go. It feels great at the mall. Is it a viable race day option? Well, yeah, I do think it is, especially if you're on a budget. What it does scream out to me, though, what it's great at is the long run. So it's got long run vibes to me. It's just because it's just so light and it's just so efficient. Yeah, you're just not wasting energy out of this shoe because your legs tick over effortlessly. I absolutely love it. Now, with the race day option, obviously this one is designed at your races. But however, depending on your pace, this shoe is going to feel great for a lot of people, I think, because again, this same similar geometry as what you've got in the Evo SL, it's the same one. So this, even though it's a race day shoe, this feels great just to jog in, just to do an easy pace in, even though it's not designed for it, but it still feels fine at that. It doesn't feel clunky. But again, this thing can handle anything from an easy pace up to your race efforts. So, but obviously you need to save this one for your race days or your key workouts, or you're just going to burn it out way too fast. Now, who are these two shoes best for? So I think the lighter runner is going to get the most out of the Pro 4. I think if you're one of those heavier runners, you're just going to crush this foam way too quickly. You're going to feel like you're going to bottom out the shoe and it's going to feel way too soft for you guys. And I think the heavier runners, I think you guys are going to get the most out of the Evo SL, because you're going to be able to sink into this foam and get lots more bounce and lots more excitement, I think, out of this foam, more so than what I can. It probably won't feel as efficient or as snappy or as firm, but yeah, I think if you're a heavier runner, you're on a budget, you're looking for a race shoe, you're looking for a do-it-all shoe, then I think this shoe is a great option for you guys. And just wrapping up the comparison here, so how does the training shoe actually match up against the race shoe for me? So if I had a race tomorrow and I had to choose one of these two shoes, which am I going for, regardless of what distance? Well, I'm still going to go with the race day shoe, and it's just because I do appreciate the bounce and I do feel like this has got more wow factor. I will feel faster in this because for me, this does still have training shoe vibes for me, and I do think I am just a little bit too light for the foam in this shoe to get the most out of it. So I do think, though, the heavier runners will probably prefer the Evo SL, the training shoe to race in, over the Pro 4, which is very, very surprising. But I do think that the Evo SL more resembles the ride in the Pro 3, so the model that came out before this. So if you are a Pro 3 fan and you don't like the Pro 4, you haven't tried the Evo SL, so for me, this is the shoe that more closely resembles the Pro 3 and a great training option for that. But again, if you're on a budget, you're one of those heavier guys, or you absolutely love the Pro 3, you hate the Pro 4, but you want something similar to the Pro 3, then this is still a pretty good option for that. So definitely at $240 or $150 in the US, this shoe is an absolute steal for what you get. And just to throw a spanner in the works, so for me, the ride of the Evo SL for me most resembles the ride in the Asics Super Blast 2. So this shoe is more rocket, it feels a little bit more nimble, but the actual feedback of the foam, so that responsive cushioned ride of that FF Turbo Plus actually reminds me of what the Lightstrike Pro feels like in this shoe. So for me, those two shoes closely match, and I see them both as great long run shoes. But anyway, guys, that is it from me. I'd like to hear your thoughts on my comparison. If you've got any questions regarding the comparison or how either of these two shoes compare to anything else, just ask me in the comments. Thanks for watching. Make sure you give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.